Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest 8-second gaming, and in today's video we're going to be talking about and breaking down where all of the legends are falling in the tier list this split. Because hey, new season, new map, the legends are moving around, the meta is shifting, and you might be wondering where everyone's falling in, so by the end of this video you will not be confused anymore. But like I said guys, there's a new map, there's a new meta, there's a new legend, there's a bunch of stuff being thrown at you, and you might be a little overwhelmed right now. And if that's the case, then you definitely need to head over and check out the GameLeap website, because over there we have top level coaches, including myself, creating the best, most highly informative guides, all aimed at making you the best Apex player you can possibly be. We have gun guides, VOD reviews, legend guides, and a brand new catalyst guide on its way very shortly. And there's no better time than right now because we're having a sale to celebrate the new season. So click the link in the description, use code S15 to get 50% off your membership and start to improve today. But okay, with that out of the way, let's hop into the tier list. And there's one thing that I do want to go over to make it clear before I actually go into explaining the different tiers. The placement of a legend in a specific tier does not matter. If they're in, say, B tier, all those legends in my mind are equal. I know that some people do it the further up in the list they are, the better they are in terms of that rank, but that's not how I do it, and I just want to make that very clear. Got it? Okay, perfect. So let's hop straight into our D tier, and there's only one legend taking its spot here, and that is Mirage. Now, Mirage has always had a spot in the lower tiers. He's never actually been that good of a character. Is he fun to play? For some people, absolutely. People do enjoy playing him, and when you're actually able to pull off a bamboozle, it is somewhat satisfying. But his clones are easy to tell which one the real one is. He has a ton of counters in the meta, he doesn't really have a ton of usefulness on a team comp, and he's just not really that good. He's just a legend that exists in the game, and you can play him if you want to, but D tier he stays. Moving on to C tier though, for here we have Revenant and Lifeline. Now Revenant used to be the bane of people's existence in Apex, all the way back in something like Season 8 when Revtame was a thing. You saw them hopping around the map constantly. But with meta shifts, Octane not being as good with Revenant, and him really needing another character with him in order to make him good, he's just not a good spot in the meta right now. Especially on Broken Moon with all of the open sight lines. If he pops his totem somewhere, he has so much open space that he needs to get across without being shot, and that's not good as a Revenant. He's just not a good pick right now. Maybe if we see some changes later on in the future, he might come back into meta, but for right now, he's in C tier. Now the next legend in C tier is Lifeline, and last split she was in the D tier, but she has seen a little bit of movement. And the main thing moving her up a tier is the fact that she does not have her res cancelled by Seer. Now yes, her drone can be good for resetting fights, getting people healed up quickly, her ultimate can be really nice for getting some loot, but honestly these POIs on Broken Moon are stacked to the roof with loot. I've gone to pretty much every single POI you can, and I've never left a spot thinking, the loot could have been better. So her ultimate would just be more of a supplementary thing rather than having to rely on it like you would on, say, King's Canyon. So if you do play Lifeline, you are a little bit better because you do counter Seer, but for the most part, I don't think people are going to want to drop a character from their legend roster in order to pick Lifeline up just because she counters Seer. Her main use comes from when your teammates are down, and you never really want to have a teammate go down in the first place. So she does move up a tier, but that only makes her go into C tier. But now we can move on into our B tier, and for this we have Bangalore, Gibraltar, Pathfinder, Rampart, Fuse, Watson, Crypto, and Catalyst. Starting off with Bangalore because she is the easiest to place in these tiers. She's always just been that middle of the pack legend since the game came out. In certain situations, she can be stupidly strong, but for the most part she messes up her own team just as much as she can mess up the enemy team, potentially even more. And with all the counters that she has towards her, like Seer, Bloodhound, Crypto, digital threats, there just aren't a ton of uses for her. The main thing that makes her such a good legend is her double time, and when you use it properly, you can get some cool stray speed out of it and win a fight that maybe you shouldn't have. But yeah, Bangalore always been a B tier legend, and here she shall stay. Moving on though, we have Gibraltar. Now a lot of people were shocked to see Gibraltar fall from S tier into B tier last season, but honestly this is a very good spot for him right now. He used to be the king of Apex. You had to have him on your team, but with the playstyle shifts and the counters that have been brought into the meta for him, he doesn't really have the same spot that he used to, and teams are realizing that you don't absolutely have to have him on your squad. Is he a good pickup? up? Yeah, in a lot of situations he is. His bubble can be really good. But right now the meta just isn't favoring Gibraltar, and he's more of just a comfort pick for some people. He isn't absolutely necessary, but if you pick him, he's not a bad pick per se, and that's why he's in B tier. Grappling his way next to Gibraltar is Pathfinder. Now Pathfinder is another shocking one because on this map there's a lot of vertical play. His grappling hook is really good, his zipline's really good. He should be a little bit higher in some people's minds. But again, he has the same issues that he's had for seasons. His hitbox is still stupidly out of whack. He's way too big to not have fortified, and his cooldowns are still way too long. You get penalized for having a good technique with your grapple. The further you go, the longer the cooldown is. And on a map like Broken Moon, where there's a lot of open sightlines where you can hit a really long grapple, that can be a huge hindrance to you and your team. If we see some changes, hopefully, fingers crossed, to Pathfinder's hitbox and his cooldowns, he would definitely move up in the meta, but right now I just cannot justify putting him any higher. Moving on though, we have Rampart. Now I have to admit, Rampart is a lot better than she used to be, especially when she first came out. Being able to move with Sheila, being able to burst down doors, stuff like that makes her a lot scarier than she used to be. But again, same issues that she's running into normally. She does not fit a spot on a team comp. She's supposed to be a defensive legend, but she can't hold buildings as well as the other defensive legends, and she doesn't really have any offensive capabilities. The only thing that she has is Sheila, and it does slow her down a little bit, so if you have some good movement, you can duck around corners, stuff like that, outplay her a little bit. The only time that Sheila really shines is if they catch you with your pants down and they're able to get those shots off on you. Now, yes, before you guys comment, Rampart can be good in some situations, but just because she's good in niche situations does not warrant her moving up any higher in the tier list, so B tier it is for her. Next up, we have the man from down under, Fuse. Now, Fuse has always been a weird legend for me. He's always been kind of a meme character. Back when he first came out, he was just absolutely useless. His knuckle cluster was more of a tickle cluster, and his mother load was more of just, hey, now I have to move slightly to the left or right. Now he is a little bit more scary. His knuckle cluster does do a decent amount of damage. His mother load can catch you out, but again, it's not anything terrifying. The knuckle cluster is more of just something that you have to move away from, so it does force you out of cover, but the mother load still doesn't activate fast enough where if you just run out of it, you won't get caught by it. And right now, with all the movement legends that are in the meta, a lot of the times the team will have some way, shape, or form of getting out of it. Because there's so many counters to him and he really doesn't do a whole lot in the meta, B tier is very fitting for him. Next up, we have the French fencer Watson. Now Watson is my baby girl. I used to play her so much back when ALGS team comp was Wraith Pathfinder Watson. And it does make me smile that she is coming back into certain team comps. But like Rampart, her defensive capabilities come in very niche situations. You have to get the right building, you have to get your gen down, you have to make sure that teams aren't really trying to force their way into your building, and with needing those niche situations, she really just isn't shining in the meta right now. Now, she is making her way back in, which is amazing. I love it. I really want to place her higher on this list, but right now she just isn't anything better than B tier. If we continue to see some playstyle shifts, some different buildings, maybe even a buff to her fences, then she will definitely move into A tier at least, but for right now, B tier she stays. Now another legend staying in B tier is Crypto. Now a lot of people seem to have the notion that Crypto is underpowered and needs a buff, but that is not the case. Crypto is actually one of the strongest characters in the game right now when played properly. But the issue with him right now and why he's in B tier, not anything higher, is he's just not good in the meta right now. The meta is basically just run everyone down, get into a fight, end it as quickly as possible, and that's not what Crypto's good for. Crypto's main use is playing hard zone, getting a good spot in endgame, using his drone to scout out, get some ring knowledge, and play for endgame where his EMP can hit a bunch of teams at the same time. But again, not the meta right now, so he's just not as useful as he should be. But if we see the meta slide back towards what it was when Ranked Reloaded came out, then we may see some differences, but for right now, he's just a B tier legend. And the new legend coming in this season is Catalyst. Now, I think we were all hoping that Catalyst would be a lot stronger than she actually is. From what we saw with all the leaks and the trailers, it looked like she was going to be the answer to the scan meta. We all thought that she was going to be the seer counter that we were hoping for, but her wall is a little underwhelming. The only thing that it blocks is his tactical. His ult still goes through it, his passive still goes through it, so seer is still stupidly strong. But that's not where Catalyst is shining right now. Being able to slow down pushes on buildings with her reinforced doors and her spike strips is making it so that people have a really hard time sieging buildings. You can potentially cover 5 different doors, 2 with reinforcements and 3 with your spike strips. I definitely don't think she's as useless as some people think she is. I think a lot of the hate is coming towards her because because Respawn overhyped us on what we all thought her abilities were going to be, and then they were just a letdown. Definitely not as weak as everyone's making her out to be, but definitely not as strong as we were hoping to be, and that's why I have her in B tier. But okay, B tier done, let's move into A tier. Now for A tier we have Caustic, Loba, Mad Maggie, Octane, Bloodhound, Ashe, Valkyrie, and Wraith. Now Gas Daddy Caustic is still ridiculously strong. He's still the best defensive character in terms of holding down buildings. His gas traps are super annoying, they make pushing buildings extremely tough, and with a lot of the building layouts on Broken Moon, he is very capable at holding them down. The only reason that I don't have him in S tier is because it takes a lot to get to those buildings, and he's still pretty hefty, so he is easily singled out if they get to you. There's a lot of open area to traverse on Broken Moon, and if your team is not absolutely squatted up, you can get caught out, and if you're not able to get to a building, you're not using him to his maximum potential. So I think he's more suitable to A tier because of how much open ground there actually is. Next up though, we have Loba. Now when Loba first came out, she was not very strong at all, but it has been surprising to me to see her actually move into the meta with the buffs that she's gotten. Her bracelet is really good for taking off angles in fights because if you start to get singled out, you can just bracelet back to your team. It's a good offensive and defensive tool, and with all the buffs that her Black Market got, she is actually a really good pick for end games as well. You can get so much stuff for your team to make sure that they can just be constantly firing, poking, getting some damage out, making sure that teams are pushing you, and if you're poking, you're probably getting poked back in return, so she can just be constantly grabbing meds. Now the reason that I have her in A tier and not S tier is because once again, the loot pool is really good on Broken Moon. You don't absolutely need a Loba like you would on something like King's Canyon where the loot pool is horrible. A lot of people liked running Loba on King's Canyon because you could just yoink a bunch of stuff from different POIs and be kitted up throughout the game instead of relying on your draw spot to get you kitted up. But on Broken Moon, you can get a lot of stuff in your draw POI and be good to go for endgame, so you don't absolutely need her. She's not S tier, but she is a great addition to the team either way, so she's A tier. Next up, wrecking her way into the A tier is Mad Maggie. Now this might come as a shocker to a few people because Mad Maggie does have a pretty low pick rate, but Maggie is a ridiculously strong fighting character. If you like to be offensive, she's a great pick, and she does counter Gibraltar and Newcastle fairly well. If Newcastle's trying to throw some cover down to res a teammate, you just throw out a riot drill and he has to move. If Gibraltar's trying to res a teammate, then you just throw your wrecking ball, destroy his dome, and he's a free shot. Now she still does have some wonky interactions with her kit. It's not perfect, that's why she's not S tier, but she is a great addition to an edge team that wants to fight, wants to get into those fights as quickly as possible because her wrecking ball does give you the speed boost, and I do think a lot more people should be picking her up this season. And speaking of aggressiveness, let's talk about Octane, our next legend. Now Octane has always been a pretty fun legend to play. He's always just been bouncing around, stimming his way into victories. He's not as good as he used to be, he's not meta defining like he used to be. That's why he's not S tier. He's A tier because of all the movement techniques that you can do, the aggressiveness that plays into the meta that you have with him. There's not a whole lot that I can say about Octane because his kit is pretty basic, so you know, just A tier. Now next up we have Bloodhound, and Bloodhound is one of my favorite characters in this game. I used to be a Bloodhound main. I technically don't have a main anymore because I just play whoever I find fun, but I have 12,000 kills on Bloodhound. I love playing them, but they do have some counters now. With Catalyst Wall, their tactical doesn't go through it, and with Seer just being that much better of a scan character right now, Bloodhound has kind of fallen out of the meta. Now there are some people that do prefer running Bloodhound over Seer, and that is a perfectly viable option, or even people have been teaming Seer and Bloodhound together to just have constant wall hacks no matter what, and that's also a good option. But right now, Bloodhound is not the best scan character, Seer is, so Bloodhound does fall lower in the tier, and that's what makes them A tier. Moving into Ashe though, I think Ashe is one of the most slept on legends in the game in terms of her abilities. A lot of people seem to think that Ashe is underpowered, but I just don't think they understand her kit right. Being able to see where all the teams are fighting on the map with her passive, and being able to interact with death boxes to see how many people are alive on the team that killed those people is ridiculously strong in its own right, but then you have her tether and her portal, and it's just adding on top of it. It's like the sprinkles on top of whipped cream on top of a nice chocolate cake. She's strong, and I definitely think that people need to start looking her way a lot more often, but she's not S tier strong, so that is why I have her continuing in the A tier. Now the next legend that I have in A tier is Valkyrie, and this is one of the legends that some people might give me some pushback on because she's pretty prominent in the meta right now. But with all the nerfs that Valkyrie has received, she does have quite a few counters, especially when you're trying to fly away with her ultimate. She's not able to spin, it does take a few seconds to actually start up, and it does not go as high. She's not as broken as she was. She's still fairly strong, don't get me wrong, but she's not absolutely necessary on a team right now now, and she's also not as good as she used to be. She definitely was S tier back a couple seasons ago, but she has fallen out of that S tier. Still really strong, great A tier pick, but not S tier. And the last legend taking a spot in the A tier is Wraith. Now, Wraith, the Portal Queen, everyone's go-to pick if they want to be sweaty in a zipline building. Her phase is still a great tool in fights. She can play a lot more split than other legends can in fights. She can do a lot of things that other legends can't do. She also has a fantastic team relocation tool for endgame circles, and that is why I still have her in the A tier. She has fallen out of meta, and a lot of people don't think Wraith is very necessary anymore, which I do agree with to a certain point, but that doesn't mean she's weak by any means necessary. She's still a great pickup right now, and if you are a Wraith fan, keep going at it, party on, Wayne, but she's nowhere near being S tier anymore. But now with the A tier done, we can move into our secretly broken tier, and this is a legend that you guys definitely need to keep an eye on this season, and that is last season's new legend, Vantage. Now, a lot of people still have the notion that Vantage is weak, and I have no idea where people are getting that from. She has a ridiculously strong passive, giving you so much information before you even start a fight, choosing if you want to actually take it or not, depending on armor levels, how many people are alive, their positioning, stuff like that. Her tactical is also great for relocating during fights or to try and get away. There's a couple movement techniques that you can do with it, and she has a stupidly strong ultimate, especially on Broken Moon. There are so many open sniper lanes and spots that you can pick from with her sniper, and it does a lot of damage, and it's super annoying to have to fight against. Last season, I recommended Vantage to a lot of people, and this season, I'm going to continue doing it until she does get a nerf. Trust me, if you guys are struggling to pick which legend to main this season, definitely try out Vantage and see what you think. But now we can move into our S tier legends, the broken ones, the ones that you guys definitely need to be picking up if you want to absolutely crush your lobbies. These legends are Horizon, Seer, and Newcastle. Starting off with Horizon, Space Mommy, everybody knows her. You throw the gravity lift down, you're Mach 50 up in the air, strafing back and forth, and on top of the gravity lift, you also have the black hole to get a nice 3-man suck off all at once. I definitely was expecting Horizon to get a nerf going into this season because of how prominent she is in the meta, but hey, we didn't see one, so S tier, she remains. And speaking of staying in the S tier, we have Seer. I don't think this surprises anybody to see him here. You have constant wall hacks, you can cancel heals, you can cancel revives, you can get so much information with him. Right now, with how aggressive the meta is, he's just such a strong pickup. Again, a legend that I was expecting to see some nerfs to in this season, but he does have his heirloom coming out, and we all know that Respawn loves to keep characters strong until their heirloom comes out, and then like 2 weeks later they'll nerf him. So we probably will be seeing some changes coming in the near future, but until those changes happen, he's going to remain in the S tier. And the last legend in the S tier is Newcastle. Newcastle is basically the Gibraltar of these last couple seasons. He creates so much space and opportunities for teams, it's actually ridiculous. Being able to move while reviving your teammates with a knockdown shield in front of them to make sure that they're not thirsted as easily, being able to throw your tactical out, move it around, be able to push with it, that's also super strong, and his ultimate is just his ultimate. There's nothing else I can say to it. Jump to somebody, slam down a portable fortress, it's electrified so teams can't push it easily. If an enemy was close to it as it slammed down, it sends them flying away. He's ridiculously strong, and if you're struggling with third parties this season, definitely look to pick up a Newcastle. He will reset fights very quickly and give your team more breathing room. But that is where I'm placing all these legends for this split. If you guys would change any of the locations, do let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. And with all this being said, if you guys want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button. Thank you guys all for watching. Once again, I'm 8 Second Gaming, and I will see you in the next one.